VocalEye Almost Live Zoom. Your Eyes, My Vision. Hosted by Amy Amantea. With special guests, Linda Bartram and Ruth Bieber.
So welcome to VocalEye Almost Live. My name is Amy Amantea. My pronouns are she, hers. I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator for VocalEye, your host for these Almost Live events, and I'm a member of the blind community. And I just want to take a moment to thank those of you who have made donations, for folks who have supported VocalEye. It's super welcome and generous for you to all do that. But do know that while there's a link that's posted in the chat to make financial contributions, there also are other ways, and some folks have written some really lovely letters in support of VocalEye. And so that's also an opportunity if you want to support and write a couple of sentences about your experience. We would love that. If you happen to be watching this event on our YouTube channel, I really hope you like and subscribe. I'm going to welcome, I'm sad to say that we don't have Deanna with us this evening, who's been doing our land acknowledgements, but we do have Ingrid with us, who is taking over doing our land acknowledgements. And Ingrid is I hate the word, a veteran, I guess, a longtime describer with VocalEye. So Ingrid, welcome to the space.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here.
I'm really happy you're here too.
I have kind of a special interest in Indigenous matters. I was born on Vancouver Island, and I spent my early childhood on Haida Gwaii, and so I've always been aware of Coast Salish culture. I'm the child of settlers. My mother's family is Scottish, and my father's family is Austrian. And the lands here are cared for by the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples, it's pretty cool that three Indigenous nations share and steward these lands and waters together. Often the boundaries between territories are more clearly cut, but because this is such an ecologically rich area, all three of those nations have shared, especially the waters. So I'm celebrating the return of spring, partly because I'm a gardener, and I have cherry trees outside my house. And I look for the flowers and plants that my settler ancestors brought with them, the primroses and the tulips and the daffodils. But I know too that Indigenous people in this region are also celebrating spring. And their signs of spring include the first cottonwood buds, salmonberry blossoms, and the herring spawn. And we've moved just a little bit beyond all of those, and families are starting to harvest their first spring greens and fish. So I acknowledge the stewards of this land because it's so easy for us, for me as a gardener, for example, to take for granted the fertility and abundance of the land here. The soil is generally very rich, and it's been nourished for a long time by this cycle of cedar trees, salmon, people, and back to the cedars. And so this has been going on for thousands of years. Indigenous people have been stewarding the land. They've been gardening and harvesting sustainably for that long. They have ancient technologies and practices that are still used successfully. And so that's partly why it's so fertile around here. I was thinking about, because we're talking today about how Your Eyes, My Vision seeks to encourage and showcase visual art created by persons who are blind. I was curious to see, well, I am curious to see if anybody's going to make representations of plant life. And that got me thinking about Indigenous representations of plant life. And I looked around a little bit, and there's not that many representations in Coast Salish art of plant life, although they used cedar for almost everything, for their clothing, for building materials, for art. But if you go further east into the prairies and the woodlands, so many plants are represented in the artwork there. Métis and interior Indigenous people do beautiful beadwork, and it's all flowers and plants. It's really gorgeous. So that's what I've been thinking about today. I'm really eager to find out about more art making today. And I'm just really happy to be celebrating spring and knowing that it's been celebrated on these lands for, as I say, thousands of years.
Thanks for that, Ingrid. What we learned from Deanna about land acknowledgements is to name, explain, and relate. So thank you for presenting those principles that she offered us in this space. All right, friends. Well, welcome officially to this Wednesday evening, March the 30th, 2022. Tonight, we're going to offer you a presentation called Your Eyes, My Vision. And this is a new visual art project from the Victoria Society for Blind Arts and Culture. And our special guest, we have a couple of special guests tonight, but it's our number 78th live event. 78, can you believe it? What are we going to do when we reach 100? Some kind of big celebration, I hope. Anyways, I wanted to invite Linda Bartram into the space because Linda is going to be our guide through this process for a very specific reason, and we're going to learn a little bit about that. And then we've got a couple of guests in the wings, and we'll introduce them as they come up on the docket to share a bit about this project. So Linda, welcome to the space.
Thank you. Am I live? Am I heard?
You are live. You are live. We can hear you, and you have a square, and you seem to be centered in it from what I can tell. So there you go. Thank you for joining us in the space.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
So I know we're gonna soon talk about the bits and pieces of Your Eyes, My Vision, but before we get into that, Linda, are you an artist? Like, what do we need to know about Linda? You're a member of the community. Folks will know you from the community, but
they do. Usually I'm wearing an advocacy hat. So I like to think of myself as an artist. I'm certainly interested in art and culture and would love to be able to do more art. And that's sort of what spurred me to write for this grant. So yeah. What do you want to know?
What has been, I want to know what your interaction with art has been in the past, and what, how you felt about it either being accessible or not accessible to you.
Yeah, well, the project talks about visual art, and so we automatically think, well, crikey, visual art and blind people, like, isn't that a kind of oxymoron? And I think that sort of thinking comes from the fact that, we assume that art is perceived through our eyes, and it really isn't. Art is perceived in our brains and in our hearts and in our minds and in our spirit. And so, the eyes are just one way of getting that message to those receptors, but there's lots of other ways of doing it. So, but I only have come to that kind of sort of conclusion in the last, few years. For a long time, I was someone who just thought that art was something that, you had to do well, or you shouldn't bother doing it, right? Mm-hmm. That there's techniques that you need to do, and it's pretty challenging to do those techniques as a blind person, to do them well, and to be, and so I guess what sorry, is my computer bothering? Can you hear that when it comes on and off when
Oh.
people are? No, good. Okay,
No,
that's
you're
great.
good.
Just me. Okay. So yeah, so I've only come to realization now that, you know, it's not about technique. It's not about, you know, creating a perfect tree or a perfect flower or a perfect, you know, face. It's about what you're trying to express, the feelings that you evoke, and you know, that can be done in a multiple of ways. It doesn't have to be done through technique. So that's sort of my experience with art and my thinking around art. And I've had a little bit of exposure in the last sort of 10 or 15 years to art in that regard. So if you wanted to hear more about that, I could tell you.
I guess what I'd like to know is a little bit about this tactile color thing that you
Yeah.
experienced. So maybe you can tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess it's 15, 20 years ago, I was introduced to something called tactile color. And it's a art medium that was utilized to express, to demonstrate colors. So each of the different colors has a different texture, and you could learn to associate, you know, what you're feeling with the color of that texture. It was developed by a woman called Lois Lowry, who was a graphic artist who lost her vision due to diabetes, and wanted a way of continuing to, you know, practice her art and to, you know, so to do some graphic art in a way that she could still sort of appreciate and do this. So she developed this technique. So the 12 sort of colors all had different textures, and it was a fabric material, paper / plasticized fabric that was adhesive on the back, so you could peel off the back, and you could cut it out and use it in different shapes to create, well, all sorts of things. She did a lot of map projects with it, but we also did one art project that I was involved with where we actually created an art piece using this tactile color. Unfortunately, Lois is no longer with us. And when we lost Lois, we also lost tactile color. A lot of the materials and the concept and everything seemed to just disappear. And some of us tried to track it down and weren't able to do so. But it's what got me started in you know, pursuing art a little bit more intensely.
I think that context is really nice because it sort of goes into this little bit of a storytelling narrative in terms of your eyes, my vision, and maybe where a part of that came from. But this is a part of the Victoria Society for Blind Arts and Culture, I don't know, initiative?
Yes.
Initiative?
Yeah.
So maybe you can just give us a little bit of information about what the Victoria Society for Blind Arts and Culture is. It sounds like it should be pretty obvious, but set that up for me and then tell me about the process of getting well, okay, set up who the society is. Let's start with that.
Sure. Okay. So the society's been going for 6-7 years now. A group of us in Victoria decided that we wanted to set up, first of all, a society, and then we became a charity shortly afterwards. And that would just help to promote arts and cultural activities for persons who are blind. So make it possible for persons who are blind, primarily in Victoria, to participate in the arts and culture as a, you know, spectator, but also as a participant as well. We've had a few projects over the years. We had a choir for many years. Unfortunately, it sort of fell away during COVID. Maybe we'll get it going again, who knows? And this is how we've connected with VocalEye, with the Belfry, and described performances at the Belfry. And we have a bursary program, and we've organized described tours of museum exhibits and art galleries here in Victoria. So those are sort of projects that we've done. And when the funding became available for, which I guess I'll talk about in a minute, I sort of saw a connection here. Maybe we need to go for some funding. The society should try and get some funding to do an art project, since we haven't done much for the last 2 years. So right. That's where that's sort of history. So we do still exist, and we're always looking for people who would love to join us. You don't have to live in Victoria, and always looking for new members.
All right, good to know. And we'll put your contact information in
Sure.
the follow-up email, so that if folks are interested in the society, they can poke you and ask some more questions. So talk to me about Your Eyes, My Vision. And again, we'll sort of do this in a big picture thing, and because there's an invite to folks later on about if they want to participate. So we'll talk about some of those details a little bit later, but let's talk about like the big picture. What does the project aim to do, Linda?
So the project aims to, it's got sort of 3 phases. It aims to encourage, facilitate, and showcase art that's created by persons who are blind. And it does this by hopefully removing most of the barriers that blind people might face when it comes to producing art. Financial barriers, transportation barriers, assistance, needing help, barriers that come from that. And so that's sort of how it's hoping to do this. It's not aimed at just people who consider themselves artists. It's aimed at anyone with a vision impairment or a vision challenge who is, would like to try their hand at creating a piece of artwork that can be displayed, quote, visually to the, that would go in an art show. So it's not performing arts, it's the kind of art that would go in an art show. So when we say visual art, it's not restricted necessarily as much as perhaps that term indicates.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important thing. Again, one, you mentioned that folks don't have to identify as an artist. So you could be a hobbyist, or you could be somebody who just wants to explore. Mm-hmm. You had this idea of, I don't know, creating something out of clay, or a painting, or a sculpture, or a fabric piece, or something, anything you wanted to, which I think, again, the sky is the limit almost in terms of what kinds of things you could aspire to want to create.
Exactly. And if even if people don't really know what they want to create, we're still interested in you connecting with us, and maybe we can help you explore that a little bit more. I think I really want persons with vision loss to really have an opportunity to tap into that side of our beings that we don't always get a chance to tap into, something to feed our souls. And to allow us to create and explore a side of our selves that perhaps we don't get an opportunity to do so very often.
Mm-hmm. So the idea is that if I want to be an artist of some kind, I let you know that I'm interested. And then if I'm accepted to the program, then, you would pair me up with another person who would help facilitate that, whether, it's to support. Right? Am I getting this right, Linda? Is this
exactly. So we'll pair each of the participants up with what we're calling them facilitators, for lack of a better word. Some of them may be artists, and some of them may just be crafters or people who can assist. We're going to hopefully connect people, make appropriate connections. It'll be someone who lives in your community, so you can actually interact with in person if you're comfortable doing that, and that probably will be necessary in a lot of cases. And we were able to get funding to hire a coordinator, Laurel, who you'll be meeting in a few minutes. And she's the one who's keeping on top of all of that, finding people, matching them up. And then we'll assist with people getting the supplies and the studio space or whatever else is needed to actually do the project. So that's the facilitate aspect of it. And then the show tonight is the encourage. This is what I'm doing tonight. I'm trying to encourage people to participate. Then we have the facilitation piece, which will happen primarily with Laurel. And then we'll have the showcase piece at the end, where we will actually partner again with VocalEye and showcase virtually at this point in time. At least we will do this. We may do some live showcasing if we can, but we'll definitely do a described art show early next year of the art pieces that have been created by the participants in the project. We have, do you want to hear more about the
well,
details?
I think, yeah, I think maybe what we should just remind folks of is who's eligible for this,
Sure.
Linda, because we have folks that are joining us from all different places. And
Right.
so unfortunately, it's not open to everybody. And know that as Linda's making this offer, Linda also has come prepared to share with us some history of blind artists and some videos of blind artists doing their things. So, even if you're not local and you're not gonna be able to join the project, there's a lot of really cool content in tonight's episode around this idea of what blind artists do and how they do it, right?
Exactly. So after I finish my my chat, there'll be lots to watch and learn from. So, and then we'll be having an actual blind artist later speaking to us and how she collaborates with a sighted facilitator in her work. So yeah, eligibility. So unfortunately, the grant came from the Disability Alliance, British Columbia, and they get their funding through the government of British Columbia. So unfortunately, it's only open to British Columbia residents, but anywhere in British Columbia, doesn't matter where you live. You have to be 19 years or older, where it's just for adults. And you need to identify as either being blind or having sufficient vision challenges that you can, that it seriously affects your day-to-day functioning. Yeah, but it's all self-identification. There's no medical requirements.
Okay.
So that's who can participate.
So we're gonna, Linda, when we come back when we get into the Q&A, so I'm giving folks a heads up, because that's when you'll give them most of the details about how they reach out to you. And again, it'll go in the follow-up email, but sort of the more logistical pieces of this. Because I think what would be nice is if we highlight some of these artists that you brought into the space, so that folks can feel empowered around the fact that there are other blind folks doing art, right? So this is not something that we're embarking on for the first time, although it might be something that somebody is embarking on for the first time. But I'd love to talk a little bit about some of these artists that you have brought some videos of what they're doing.
Yeah, so when I was, researching for the grant and the project, I went online just to see who's out there, who's doing this kind of art, and came across 3 artists, and Laurel found another one for me. So we're going to feature those tonight. They are all pretty well doing painting or painting-like art, but that's not to say that our project, I want people to realize it's not all about painting. It's just that's the videos that were available. And they all have different levels of vision loss and came to art, some of them before they lost their vision and some of them after they lost their vision. But I think they all have something to share with us. And so they're 6 to 8 minutes long, each of them. And I hope people enjoy them.
So let's, I think now's a good time to invite Laurel into the space. So let's give Laurel a moment to join us. And we got Laurel, and oh, there's Laurel. I see another square. Wonderful. So welcome, Laurel. I wonder, Linda had started to talk about the fact that you're going to be helping facilitate I'm going to call it the meet and greet between folks. So tell us what your role is with this project and a little bit about who Laurel is.
Yeah, all right. So I guess starting with my background, I'm an artist myself. I went to Emily Carr, so I have a Bachelor in Fine Arts in illustration. So that's what kind of drew me to this project. I mean, it's like all about the arts, and it's important to me, I guess, as an artist, to kind of like expand my own perception of what art can be. Going to art school, it was always very like visually based, but I think, art can really be anything, like as Linda was touching on. It's not just visual, it's our senses, it's what we experience, it's what we can feel, smell, touch, etc. So I'm very excited to see what comes out of this project. And in terms of my role, I've been meeting with some artists already who've been emailing, signing up for the project. I've been trying to find facilitators for the project, reaching out to my artist friends in various communities, getting them excited about the project. And then in April, I think we're going to be working on like matching those people up, making sure that we have a good pairing between people who feel like they can work together well, trying to find out like what they might want to be working on. Getting that all set up.
Awesome. So you're going to be highly involved in the whole process.
Yes.
Which is great. It's nice to have kind of a guiding star, a North Star in the process when you're getting new into a project. So I appreciate that. You also have done some descriptions because these videos of these artists don't have a lot of description to them. So we're going to do some sort of pre-show descriptions. Yes. They're pretty easy to follow audibly, but we wanted to have folks understand a little bit about the kind of art that they were doing and what the lens was. So before we play the first video, who is the artist that we're going to experience? Maybe that's a Linda question.
Oh gosh, I haven't got the list.
Maybe it's a Laurel question. Laurel, who's the first artist?
Our first artist tonight, her name is Rachel Gadsden.
Rachel Gadsden. And would you be able to provide us with the pre-video, I'll call it, introduction to the video?
Yes, so I have a video description and an art description. So I'll start with the video description. So Rachel Gadsden is a UK-based visual and performance artist who has exhibited internationally. She works in both mainstream and disability art sectors and has done a few art projects in support of townships in Africa where folks are affected by HIV/AIDS. Gadsden is impacted by vision loss and engages with this in her work to reflect a specific way of seeing people, portraiture, and the world. She also has a lung condition, which she says is central to her exploration of fragility and resilience in her artwork. Her art style is energetic and frenetic, and she paints partially with her hands, which allows her to have better control over what she is creating as it creates works which have a very tactile quality to them. The campaign, which will be mentioned in the video, Rosh's Changemakers campaign, aims to raise awareness of the impact of vision loss on daily life. Using art as a creative vehicle, 3 artists living with blindness, which is Gadsden, as well as a musician and a poet, have come together to create an audio-visual performance. The performance expresses the impact of vision loss on people's lives, the common experiences, the emotions felt, and the courageous, persistent human response to overcoming the challenges faced. The end goal of the project is to bring the communities, the experiences, and the challenges experienced by people living with vision loss to the forefront. And then I also have a bit of an art description because during the video she's seen to be painting, but doesn't really describe the paintings in the video. So the art description is all of the artworks that are shown over the course of the video are somewhat abstract, and they all feature loose and vibrant brushstrokes. Some have bright pops of color, whereas others remain a bit more muted. All have a tactile quality to them, and raised paint can be seen on the canvas. The subject she paints the most is the human form, seen in a range of movement, almost dancing across the canvas in a number of different overlapping poses.
All right. That's a lot to unpack in a video,
yes.
But I appreciate the guidance because this video does have a little bit of description in it, but it's very basic. I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and ask Rick to play this first video, friends. It's about 7 minutes long. So this is Rachel Gadsden and her art.
As an artist, because of being a survivor, I'm a survivor. I've been resuscitated many times. And I was probably aware at the age of 3 that, life wasn't going to go on forever. So at the core of my work is really understanding the human condition and people.
The artist picks up a piece of cherry red pigment and strokes the end of soft bristle brushes stained with paint. She chooses 2 brushes and slips them into her leather apron.
My name's Rachel Gadsden, and I'm a visual and performance artist.
Wearing a pair of patterned glasses, Rachel stands by her expressive abstract paintings, clutching brushes in her paint-stained fingers. She smiles.
I have spent probably about the last 30 years of my life as an artist, and it's very much my life. I will admit that I'm a complete workaholic. I paint all the time, draw all the time, and it's my total passion. I was actually born with a disability. I have a lung condition. And more recently, I found out, probably about, 15 years ago, that I have an eye condition called retinoschisis. So I've lost a fair amount of my sight. I can remember the first moment I was told that I had quite a serious eye problem and that it was going to have to be investigated. And as all I can really describe it is as if I'd been sort of like punched in my chest. It was quite terrifying. And I remember coming home and I made a sculpture in my studio with my eyes closed because I was thinking, how's all this creativity going to come out in another way? And then one day I realised, you get on with this or you give up. And I was not going to give up. Never.
She stares defiantly.
I was approached by Roche to be part of this quite incredible creative project that shows how living with visual impairment can actually also be empowering too. I'm working with a blind poet, Dave, and also Beluji, who's an instrumentalist and performer, and we'll be working with his orchestra. And the other side is we're also working and connecting with patients who have visual loss or visual impairment. And it's almost as if I've met a group of kindred spirits from all around the world, and that we all understand something that's unique to us.
It's hard to understand how much sight means to us until we realize we could lose it. It took me a whole month to seek medical help. I didn't believe it was just cataract, like the first doctor said, and I was right. The second doctor explained I had diabetic retinopathy.
Goodness me, Lucera, you've been through quite a challenge. How have you coped with it?
I have undergone several surgeries to save my vision, and through each recovery, my family has been by my side. They did everything for me. Now I feel I have a second chance, and I am forever grateful to everyone who has helped me.
When I first noticed my vision beginning to fail, I didn't even tell my wife and daughters. I didn't want to share this burden with them. Every time I spilled my drink or missed my shot at the basketball hoop, I would worry that their suspicions would grow.
It's been really interesting finding out about the different conditions that Thaneken and Lucera have. Thaneken has a form of age-related macular degeneration, and Lucera has diabetic retinopathy. And I suspect they both see in quite a similar way to the way I see. That's what I've understood from the conditions when I've looked them up. We see in a similar way, which actually draws us back closer together again. But of course, nobody would know. You can't see that I have vision loss at all. I just, people say, oh, you wear glasses, don't they work for you? But of course, it's not so simple as that. I'm always asked, what's it like to have visual impairment? How do you see? And often I think it's like swimming underwater. And sometimes you can see a little bit and sometimes you can't see anything at all. But what's really interesting is that although I might see less and it's all blurred, my imagination has completely gone through the roof. So I sort of feel that I see the world in a far more beautiful way. And that's what I hold on to. If I walk into a forest, it's like the brightest and most wonderful forest ever, because there's also my brains coming in and telling the story too.
I will also agree with you that we don't see with our eyes, we see with our brains. Eyes are light sensing organs that take a message to the brain, and the brain interprets the images. And the brain has a lot of plasticity to where it can fill in the missing pieces. And this allows people to have wonderful adaptive capabilities despite being sight limited.
It's quite interesting when you tell somebody that you have vision loss. The first thing I'm usually told by the person is, oh my goodness me, that would be the worst thing that could ever happen to me. And I look at them and I say, but it hasn't happened to you. It's happened to me. What I hope this project and this campaign does is make people feel just a little bit more sensitive about the fact that it does happen to people and how they might be able to support those people that it does happen to. Because it could happen to anyone. It really could. I never expected this to happen to me, but it has, and I'm living with it, and I'm living really well with it. And so is everybody involved in this project. But if we can just bring that openness and kindness and generosity, then the world becomes a much better place to be.
Rachel sits in her studio surrounded by her work.
I'm really excited to show you what I've come up with, and of course I'm excited about the performance day. That's going to be really magical, all coming together. And ultimately, I hope that somehow this project empowers individuals who are experiencing vision loss, and that they know that there is life beyond what's been happening to them. It should just be very empowering.
Rachel is signed to the bottom corner of one of her striking paintings. Text on screen, doing now what patients need next. Roche.
All right, that was Rachel. And for folks, just a couple of the visuals, and Laurel had sort of set us up for this, but there was this lovely moment where Rachel has a huge canvas on a wall, and she literally has like a handful of paint. It's like it's like putting your hand in a bucket of creamed corn. Like, it's a handful of textured paint, and she just goes to the canvas and just starts smearing in a real frenetic way. And it's a very, very large, almost wall-sized canvas. So, I think it's a great example of the way we can express how we feel, because she's emoting something, right? It's not like she's trying to paint a river with a tree and some fish and a guy with a dog and like all the stuff that we think that we can't do. She's transferring energy through paint onto the canvas, which I thought was really cool. Linda, what does it do for you to experience a video like this?
Well, it's great that you explained that, because I didn't realize that's what she was doing. And yeah, I think sort of just that connection with we don't need vision to do this, and that we can express ourselves and have a very fulfilling life without vision, and art is one way of helping us to explore that, and she showed us how we can do that.
And I wonder too, Linda, if you think that getting involved in art at whatever level, maybe it's an entry level, maybe you've been doing it for a long time, whether that breaks stigmatization of blindness or disability, but of course we're here to talk about blindness, right?
Yeah, I imagine so. I would think for this, for the sighted folks that are out there, I mean, just somebody who sees this and would never imagine that we'd even be interested in art, let alone be creating it.
Right.
It sets up a whole new kind of thinking that goes way beyond us, but goes out into the public as well. And that's my hope.
I love that. Okay, we've got a couple other artists that we want to feature. So with that, Laurel, I'm going to ask you to introduce artist number 2.
All right. So artist number 2 is named Hal Lasko, and the video description is Hal Lasko, dubbed the Pixel Painter, is famous for the visual masterpieces he has created using Microsoft Paint. Lasko began losing his vision in 2005 due to macular degeneration, meaning that he does not have sight in the center of his vision. Microsoft Paint allowed magnification, and he was able to paint his virtual masterpieces pixel by pixel. He has been featured in a documentary, The Pixel Painter. His work has also been shown at a few art shows. And then I have a little art description for some of the pieces that are shown over the course of the video. So some of the artworks feature landscapes of trees drawn with a wide variety of colors. One is of a ram. One the one he calls in the video Space Highways, is more abstract and features long stripes of color on a black background. All of his work is highly pixelated and has a very digital look to it.
And I found I think they celebrated in the video his 96th birthday, so he's not young.
Not young, but he's living his dream.
Yeah, exactly. So I felt it. I found this very moving, this one.
All right, friends. So this video is just over 8 minutes long for some context, but I'd love to learn more about Hal. So Rick, when you're ready, please play Hal Lasko for us.
Do you know I do a lot of my painting with my eyes shut? I jumped up out of bed and went to the computer to see if I could do what I dreamed I could do. People now generally call me Grandpa.
Why is that?
Because I'm old and that's what I am.
Grandpa is what they call a lettering man, which means he was a typographer. A typographer's job is to create letter forms by scratch. So you're literally hand drawing A through Z and creating these spec sheets that eventually get used in layouts, in advertising and greeting cards and posters and etc. We got Grandpa a computer probably 15 years ago. I knew I had to show him Microsoft Paint, and once I did, he took off with it. And it wasn't until years later that we realized how important this thing was to him.
When I lost my eyesight, I thought my painting days were over. The reason I'm using the computer is different because I'm using it because it gives me the benefit of magnifying enough so that my eyesight is good enough that I can still do it. This was one of my first drawings on the computer. So I figure out what I want to do first when it's normal size, and then I just bring up that part. And I work on the detail of that only. See, if it takes me 2 years to do that, I can spend it. I got a lot of patience. That's what you really need anyway, so. Hi, Bob.
Hey, Hal.
I got a new print that I'm just starting. It's Space Highways.
It started out with just one thing. He had no idea how to get it out of the computer. And then once we figured out what he exactly wanted, he would bring more and more and more things in. It was a growing relationship that really turned out well. You can see the actual pixels, the squares in the paintings. Most people want those gone. Hal wants those kept. Hal won't go away. So keeps coming back for more.
Happy birthday to you. The big 9-7.
You mean I gotta blow those out?
You do.
Yes.
Grandpa, there's only two.
You have to make a wish.
Yeah,
make a wish first.
Deep
Big
breath.
wish.
Deep breath.
Grandpa, make a wish. Okay.
He will talk to you about art for longer than you want to listen to him. Sometimes he talks about it in his sleep. I don't like to go to his studio downstairs because I can't get out. He just wants to keep me there, wants to keep showing me things, which is fine.
I got two things going, and I'm starting a third one now.
Oh.
And I like this one a lot.
Tell me about it.
It's called Space Highways.
Whoa.
It's a big, this is a small statement about a big subject. You know, it's no longer work, it's fun. When I worked, I always had to do something to please the client.
So now you can have your own creative freedom.
Now I can do whatever I want, you know.
Do you think about your paintings a lot?
That's all I do. Got interested in trees when I used to caddy. All year long they change color and everything.
Yeah.
And then I had a third grade teacher that she taught me a poem. This is poetry.
You remember it from way back then?
Oh yes. I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree that looks at God all day and lifts its leafy arms to pray. A tree that may in summer wear a nest of robins in her hair. Poems are made by fools like me. I always say paintings were made by fools like me, and only God can make a tree. I'm interested in public reaction to anything that I've done, negative or positive. See, in me and painting in my room, nobody ever sees what I really do.
I mean, I think he's getting stronger, not weaker. Actually, since my mom died a couple of years ago, he doesn't really talk much about her. I mean, I think he is able to just go on. I mean, I think I've never heard him complain about his age or talk about dying at all. He doesn't have that in him.
Okay, that was Hal Lasko. And what a lovely human being. But I think this is a lovely, great, empowering example of art being more than one medium, being able to explore more than one medium. I love that he's 97. I kind of wonder when this video was taken, if he's still 97 or, if we've lost Hal at this point. But there was this moment, and folks, you might have heard that sound like a bunch of people gathered in a space together, and they were looking at kind of a little gallery exhibition, and many of the pieces were his trees that he had done digitally. And so folks were mingling and observing his trees, and he was in his element, right? Loving those responses. So Linda, again, for you, what is something, what does Hal's experience say to you in terms of how it relates to this project. And Linda's on mute, I think. I'll just give Linda a moment to unmute. There we go.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah, never too late to start.
Never too late to start.
Nobody's too old. And yeah, and you may discover something that you become incredibly passionate about and don't want to do anything else. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, he isn't still with us. This video was a while back. So yeah, I did read something about that he'd passed away a few years ago, but yeah, that was sort of why I picked this one. It's kind of that message.
Right. I love that. It really resonates, again, especially for folks who have never tried art. Like you said, it's never too late to jump on in and give it a try. Okay, let's take a look at our third artist. So Laurel, would you like to introduce John to us?
Yes. So the third artist, his name is John Bramblitt. And so a little bit about him. He is a native of El Paso, Texas. He became blind at the age of 30 due to severe epileptic seizures. And he says that he became a painter not in spite of his blindness, but rather because of it. Painting helped him overcome a bout of severe depression. And to paint, Bramblitt uses raised painted lines to feel the outlines of his drawings, and then he colors in the shapes. He learned to discern the difference in colors by feeling the rich tactile details of their textures. All of his paintings are brightly colored, and he paints a wide variety of subjects, including people, butterflies, and wine bottles. His art is sold in more than 30 countries, and he has authored 2 books about his emergence as a blind artist. And so a little bit of an art description for the paintings that are shown over the course of the video. The painting that the video focuses on is of a nude woman sitting towards the viewer with her knees bent, covering her chest. Her head is tilted down and to the left of the canvas. Her outline is captured in bold strokes of black paint. Where the light is hitting her, Bramblitt has left the canvas mostly white, but where she is in shadow, Bramblitt has painted in numerous galaxies of color: greens, yellows, purples, reds, and pinks. The background has a tie-dye-like effect, with numerous colors melting into one another softly.
That's lovely. So I'm excited to experience John, and then of course I'm going to ask Linda why we chose John as an artist to feature. So Rick, when you're ready, maybe you can share with us John's video.
I've had epilepsy all my life, and then I had a series of really bad seizures, and I lost my eyesight. I thought my life was over. I thought everything good in my life was done. But painting had helped me find, a happier sort of way, and I became to realize that you didn't need eyesight to be able to create art or appreciate art. You know, art is something that's in your mind, it's in your heart, it's something that is eternal. It has nothing to do with your eyesight. My name is John Bramblitt, and I'm a painter. Well, before I started painting, I paint it in my mind. I try to figure out what I'm going to do with it. And I usually paint to a system. Like I break a painting down, so I have different steps that I'm going to take to finish a painting. If you're sighted, you're going to use your eyes to know where you are and what you're doing. But if you're visually impaired, then you're going to use your hands to do that. I started learning orientation and mobility. That's where you learn how to use a guide dog. I thought whenever I was able to do that by actually going through a city using just your touch, I thought, well, surely I can get across a canvas. So I started laying the lines on a canvas in the same way that I would travel in a street. If 2 lines cross, there's only one place on that canvas you could be. So it's like a map in my mind. I know exactly where I am. I don't know, it just makes sense in my brain for some crazy reason. When so many other things don't. For some reason, painting does. With color, I just, either I put the paint in a tube that I know what it feels like, a bottle, or I braille the sides. But then I'll also change the way the paint feels. I use different mediums so that whenever the paint is on the palette, each paint actually feels different. You know, I started painting for a very specific reason, and that's because it didn't make sense. I felt like people didn't understand me, and were like, they didn't know how much I understood. You know, and I wanted to tell people that I was still in here, you know, hey, I'm still here. Painting forced me to slow down, you know, to where you're only thinking about the paint on the end of your brush. You know, you're not thinking about anything you lost. You're not worried about the future. It's just that 1 microsecond, you know, of the paint going onto the canvas. That's all you can think of. And then when you leave the easel, you're a lot less stressed. Hey, sweetie. Thank you for running to the store, baby. Hey, Jack. What is this?
Turkey.
Oh, well.
It's upside down also.
Oh. I'm happier now in my life than I've ever been in my entire life, sighted or not. Life's more colorful. But one of the most incredible things, though, is that I never really thought I'd have a family, you know. But I met my wife after I lost my eyesight. I'd been painting a few years, and we had this amazing son that I never would have dreamed of. Life is crazy. It's just brilliant. You know, you try to plan it, you know, you try to come up with all these plans and try to figure everything out. And it's impossible, you know. Sometimes you think something that's going to be terrible turns out to be something that, in hindsight, was a blessing. That's really all you can do. You know, you just live your life every day, and, you know, and as long as Jack and Jackie are happy and everything's going on, and I've got paint in my tubes, and it's good to go.
As long as I got paint in the tubes, I'm good to go. I love it. Linda, why did this one feel important for you to share?
I think it covered a lot of things. I mean, it was very inspiring for me personally. And he talks about some of the techniques, which I'm sure a lot of us are curious about. Like, well, how do you do this, though? How do you make sure you're painting where you want to be painting? And so he talked about that. And, you know, the fact that he didn't take up painting till he lost his vision. So, you know, it's not something that was part of his makeup beforehand, before he started to lose his vision. So I think that, you know, some of us can identify with that. So that was some of the things that really inspired me about this one. And I think also the fact that, you know, we can be so bogged down in everything that's going on in the world, and it would be really nice to have that kind of escape. And I think he sees it as, you know, this is all you focus on. It's my escape from the world for a time, at least, while he's creating his art. I think that's something we can all learn from.
I think, you know, as an artist myself, it's one of the things I love about being in the art. Like I have found ways to adapt to the kind, like, so many folks know that I'm a beater, and I found ways to adapt. And so I don't feel blind in those moments, because I'm so focused on the task at hand and get so much joy out of that it's I kind of forget about it. I kind of forget, you know, that's a part of my lived experience, because you become so in tune with what you're doing that, you know, nothing else in the world matters truly in those moments. So Linda, I think we need to maybe talk about some of the logistics of this project.
Sure.
So let's focus on that. So we'll say thank you to Laurel in the space. So Laurel, if you want to wait in the wings, if there are any questions in our Q&A for you, you're welcome to pop back on in. So Linda, the logistics of this project are what? You know, what are the deadlines if people are interested? Because now folks, maybe I'm hoping folks have been a little bit inspired, and then, you know, Ruth is going to come in and share with us some stuff as well about the art that she's doing. So, you know, how do people get involved?
Okay, so we do have a deadline, and that's April the 15th. And if you want to pursue this further, find out more, put your name on the list. I'm hoping we're going to be totally inundated, and we'll have to have a lottery to pick the people. We have funding for 15 people to participate, full funding, but we may be able to stretch that further depending on the costs of people's different, art projects. But we're sort of going with 15 at the moment. If we get more people than that, then we will do a lottery to keep it fair, and just pick names out of a hat, literally. So if you want to be considered, and there's no obligation, even if you give our name and then you change your mind, there's no obligation in the beginning. Once we get going, there is, but at the beginning there isn't. And April 15th, which is 2 weeks Friday, I believe, is April the 15th. That's our deadline for names. If people, all you need to do is send us an email at blind, and this will be shared, but just to let you know in case people can write it down, it's Blind Arts Project, all one word, BLINDARTSPROJECT. Boy, that taxed me. at gmail.com. And there's also a phone number. And if somebody on the call has the phone number handy, I have it here, but I'd have to look in the document. Let me see if I can find it.
And friends, it'll be circulated in the post follow-up email. So you'll have all of Linda's contact information there as well. If you're interested in just putting your name forward. And again, as Linda says, you can put your name forward and then go, you know what? I've changed my mind. That's totally cool. But Linda, maybe tell us how long folks have to create their artwork, so they're not feeling like they only have 10 minutes to do this, or
no,
10 days, or how long do they've got?
No. The project, we hope the projects will be finished by about the end of November. So you've got lots of time to work on it. And if there's funds available and you've got time, you can maybe do more than one. Just so that we know and we have them ready for putting the art show together, that'll be happening in sort of January next year. So that's the deadline. So, I don't see that this should be too challenging for people to complete in that time frame. And so that's the logistics. I do have the phone number. It's 604-245-2160. And I think you have to leave a message there, and then Laurel will call you back if you leave your phone number. So for those who are, not so comfortable with sending emails or whatever, that's all you need to do at this point in time, and just tell us who you are and give us your contact info, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, that sounds, it's super doable. I'm wondering about, we talked about the fact that these pieces, and again, we have 15 folks, so not all of the pieces will be able to be shown on the VocalEye platform. VocalEye, where am I coming up with these things? The Almost Live platform, because again, we'd be here for 4 hours doing that. But we'll select some artists to share in this space. And then you were sort of thinking about it, I'm assuming this is COVID permitting, but this idea of a live arts show. So what will happen with folks' art once it's created, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, so if we can, I'd love to do an art show and a live art show, maybe even a touring live art show if we can get some more funding. But perhaps something next White Cane Week in February might be an opportunity. We'll also try and promote or assist people in connecting with any art shows that may be going on in their communities that they could enter their piece into as well. In Victoria, we have the Artists with Disabilities art show that happens around about the International Day of Disabled Persons, December 3rd. So anybody in Victoria could enter their piece, hopefully, in that art show. Mm-hmm. So the art does belong to the artist, but we sort of ask that you make it available to, for us to display at least for a few months, potentially after the project is finished, and then it's yours to keep.
So don't throw it away.
No,
don't mail it off to your grandmother in Australia.
No, you can give it to somebody if you like. That's fine.
As long as you can get it back for the art show, but maybe wait until after
the art show. Exactly.
After the art show, because that could be really cool to be in an art space and to talk about your piece.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that'd be really cool. Okay, Linda. Well, I'm gonna let you take a step aside, and I'm gonna bring Ruth into the space, and then we'll all come back together to do a little chit chat around the project, around how we can make it more accessible for us, all those, and take some questions from folks who are on the line tonight. So thank you so much, Linda. I know you'll be waiting in the wings, and I want to bring Ruth Bieber into the space. So we'll give Ruth a moment to pop on in. Hello, Ruth. How are you? Ruth is on mute.
Hello.
Hello, we can hear you.
Can you see me?
Yeah, you got a square and you're a bobblehead in a square. Yeah.
Okay. So Houston, we have liftoff.
We have liftoff.
So
before we get into, folks know you well in this space. You presented a few times, but I'm wondering what your thoughts are about the other artists that were shared in the space, the 3 videos.
So what I really loved about the presentations we saw was the diversity, because I've always said, when you've met one blind artist, you've met one blind artist.
Mm-hmm.
We're all very different. We have different training. Some blind artists have classical training. Some are organically trained, such as myself. Some have lost sight before they became an artist, after, and the techniques are all very, very different. And so that's what I really loved about what we saw so far.
So Ruth, for you we know you a little bit as a performing artist in the space, or playwright, and but when did you start getting involved in visual art?
So I lost my sight when I was 6, just to give a little context, but I always loved the idea of art. And as I grew up, I found myself going to art galleries and having art described to me and learning all about the artists and the political environment that the artists were creating in. I just found the whole thing totally fascinating, but I never thought of myself as being an artist until I went to New York. So between 2008 and 2010, I was very fortunate to spend some time in New York, where I became involved with the Art Beyond Sight Institute. And lo and behold, they're an organization that trained docents to lead tours of art exhibitions for blind people. And so I participated in tours at the Guggenheim and Whitney and MoMA, and I still do virtually now, which I'm very thrilled about. And I then also became aware of a number of blind artists, Buster Howell, and I actually met John Bramblitt myself as well. And a lot of people don't realize that even Georgia O'Keeffe lost her sight later in life and continued to do art by collaborating with her assistant. She would tell her assistant what she wanted to put on the canvas, and he would do it because she was a trained artist, so she could do that. Other artists like myself are more organically trained. So, yeah.
There's this, I've known a lot of artists with disabilities for many, many years. And there was a misconception, but a conception at some point that you weren't the artist if you needed help, right? That person was actually the artist, not you. So break down that myth for us, because you have experienced this firsthand, what it is that Linda is what Linda's offering in this program.
Yeah, I think it's actually a bigger statement than just within the realm of the arts, Amy. I think there's this belief generally that as a blind person, you haven't really made it unless you've done it yourself. And it's just not true. I think life is all about collaboration. And so even, like I said, Georgia O'Keeffe, she had an assistant. She's a very well-known, famous artist. We just had a presentation through the Guggenheim about David Johnson, who's another British artist. And yeah, he had all kinds of support and assistance. And it's all about the conceptualization. I think if you can conceptualize what it is you want, then the world is your oyster in terms of how you get there.
Yeah, and I think, you know, if we go back far into history to the days of Da Vinci and Michelangelo, those folks weren't painting and sculpting necessarily all on their own either. They had apprentice painters, and those were sighted, able-bodied folks for all intents and purposes, right? So this idea of there being assistance to support an artist is not a new concept.
Not at all. Mark Rothko is a very, very famous artist that most people would be familiar with his name. And if you've ever had the chance to see the play Red, I mean, you know, there he is with his assistant, and his assistant did a whole lot of stuff. And then, of course, it becomes very interesting because the assistant then becomes a different kind of a painter, which is the other side of painting, isn't it? It's all the different genres that come to play. Yeah.
So Ruth, you have a special guest that you invited into the space tonight. So maybe you can introduce the special guest and we can start talking a bit about what you all are sharing tonight.
Yeah, so Cheryl Hann. Now, how does this work with Zoom? Can people see her?
Yeah, any moment now she'll be spotlit and brought in, and it'll be the three of us in 3 squares, like Hollywood squares, only 3.
I always think it's like Romper Room. I see Cheryl and I see Amy.
Oh, that takes me back big time, Ruth. Wow.
I think of it every time I hear that on the Zoom call. I see so-and-so.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to stop myself from laughing when I say that out loud now.
Yeah, I know.
Well, we do have Cheryl with us. So
hello. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, so just to give a little background and a little context here. So after my time in New York was finished, of course, my reticular activators were alive and well, and I was interested in continuing my art experience as an artist and in gallery tours. And I ended up in Kelowna. And lo and behold, if there wasn't a spontaneous art program there, and Cheryl Hann and Carolyn Cowan were doing intro sessions on the spontaneous art program, which was perfect for me because the whole supposition from the Lisa Lipset from Salt Spring Island perspective is that true creativity comes from using the non-dominant hand and eyes closed. So there you go. Enter the blind aspiring artist. So Cheryl, you did an intro session and I became very interested in the program. I joined the program and you and I became friends and we decided to do some collaborative pieces together.
We did, and it was fabulous.
So Cheryl, this is going to sound like a naive question, but does that mean that you identify as an artist yourself?
I tend to say that I paint, just as I have a history of dance and I write, rather than sort of attached to the title of artist.
Okay. So I guess my point in asking the question is that did you have an understanding of, because what's going to be shared is some paint projects. Did you have any experience with that medium before, embarking on this adventure?
No, actually, well, just within the spontaneous program itself. So I had been participating for a couple of years and really found myself intrigued and curious and just loved the process, because I was actually initially invited to open the program with an imagery, because I was trained as someone who does imagery. And when I experienced the process with the paint, I fell in love with it. And I thought, I have to do this. So it was a different form of creativity that I was just so attracted to.
And if I could just jump in here, it's such a good time for this, because often people think of a piece of art as something realistic, like realism, right? But with the spontaneous process, whereas there can be hints of realism, typically it's about form and texture and color and all those wonderful things that a piece of art can bring to a piece of art. And it may or may not look like a flower, but it will still be very, very beautiful. And I have to say, Cheryl's work in particular features color. I've always heard her say she follows the color, and some of her works are amazing.
That's evocative. She follows the color. I love it.
Yeah. So I wonder if we might bring up the first image.
I think that's a great offer, Ruth. So Rick's got the images side. Yeah, go ahead, Ruth.
Oh, Hurricane of the Eye.
Hurricane of the Eye. So Rick's going to bring that photo up, or it's a photo of your painting. And I think Cheryl's going to
describe it.
Yeah, take a crack at describing this.
Oh, yes, because it's abstract and it's not a thing. It makes it particularly difficult to describe. And I would like to say a little bit, very briefly, about the process here, because that for me is a critical piece. When Ruth invited me to do a collaborative painting with her, we did talk about what our shared interest was, which was the spontaneous process painting. We had a conversation first. Ruth worked on the canvas, and it's a large canvas, about 28 by 36, I think. Worked on the canvas at home, and then she passed it over to me. So I received a canvas that had lots and lots of texture on it. It had some aquamarine on it. It had some yellow on it, various other colors. And I took the canvas in and started to paint, and found myself quite stifled, actually, because I was very concerned as I painted that I didn't want to cover up anything that Ruth had painted. And it wasn't working. And so I finally had to stop myself, sit back and say, what's the problem here? And the problem is that I wasn't in the spontaneous process. And so I reflected back on Ruth's and my conversation. And we have a friendship, we have a certain degree of this understanding of this process. We have a trust. And I have full faith in Ruth as a very capable, full-lifed individual. So I sat back and I thought, no, I need to follow the paint. I need to follow the movement, and get out of my own vision, get out of my own head, and move with it. So that's what happened. And within about 10 minutes, I found myself laughing, because when I applied paint, and there's often a lot of allowing paint to drip and move on its own, I realized as it did go around all this texture, I laughed and I thought, Ruth is everywhere on this canvas, because there was so much texture. And anything that I put on top of the texture and the paint that was already there, nothing that you see in this moment could be there without what was already done by Ruth. So for me, it was actually a huge learning experience, huge opportunity. And it really emphasized for me, again, the importance of being able to tap into that spontaneous piece. So the painting itself, if in your mind's eye you could imagine a bit of a hurricane, a hurricane of color, with the predominant color really being sort of a purplish, reddish purple color. There's lots of movement, lots of circular movement within the color and within the texture. In the center of the canvas, there's these sort of semicircle shapes of blue and lots of wisping of yellow. There's an over sort of whitewash of white that has been dripped. And an interesting part of this process, when I put on white blobs and then sprayed them, at one point I suddenly came back from the canvas and it looked like an eye that was starting to melt, which was really interesting. So yeah, I'm not sure that I can describe it any more than that without.
Yeah, and by abstract, you know, really that is, there isn't anything discernible as an image.
No.
Here. So, you know, the way you've described it means that we all have to use our imaginations to experience what almost a blur of color might be as it swirls around in the center of the eye of a hurricane, for example. So I think that that's really interesting. I'm curious, you talked a bit about texture.
Yes.
How are you making the paints textured?
So I always begin with some modeling paste, for example, just a nice big blob of it in my hand with a glove, and I just start to smear it around. And sometimes I'm a bit more intentional, depending on what my conceptualization is, but my favorite is just putting a big blob of something in my glove and then smearing it around the canvas and see what happens. Gel works as a lovely texturizing medium. I've used spackle, you know, what they used to construct homes with. Or you can use anything, you know, there's a whole found object movement within art. You can literally put anything on a canvas to add texture to it. So
okay. I love that. I'm curious about the first, what was it called, Ruth, the first medium you were talking about?
Modeling paste.
The modeling paste. So in my mind, when you say that, it reminds me like, you know, you would squeeze it out of a toothpaste tube kind of, and then smear it on, and where it's raised is where the texture is. And some spots may be thinner, some spots may be thicker. So you could really do this like finger exploration on the canvas, and then you layer the paint on top. That's what you're saying.
That's right. And then the beauty of it is when you start putting the paint on top, as Cheryl indicated, the paint really moves around the textured bits, and it's quite magical. Yeah.
Do you either of you know of a technique? I think, you know, John had maybe started to talk about this in the video, but a technique where you mix the medium with the paint. So the paint in and of itself is, it has texture.
Yeah, that's just something you can do. I don't know that it's got a name. Does it have a name, Cheryl?
Not that I'm aware of, but you can certainly mix paint with a number of the mediums, like the gels or the modeling paste. And both Ruth and I tend to use a lot of natural elements as well, sometimes sand. You can mix sand.
Yeah. So I would imagine then if you were going to mix sand in there, that you'd probably need something like the gel to go with it, because otherwise it might just fall off your canvas. Something has to adhere it to the canvas in some way.
Well, because it's acrylic paint, oftentimes some light things can actually just be suspended in the paint themselves. I've used lint.
Oh, interesting.
Dryer lint.
Yeah.
And again, it just is suspended in the acrylic of the paint.
It's interesting to me because as you're talking about this, I'm thinking of like dried leaves. And flower petals and things. Not that I would go destroy nature, but there's a ton of that falls to the ground in terms of found objects, right? And the kinds of cool textures that come out of those things that could be embedded into a canvas.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Could be kind of cool.
Exactly. Yeah.
Why don't we bring up the next photo?
Yes.
Photo of a painting.
And then Cheryl, you need to say how you were not going to be undone.
No. So Ruth had asked if I would do one painting with her, but through my experience of this painting and the process of it, I realized that if we were just sticking with process, that it needed to be reversed. And so I needed to be putting paint on canvas and saying, as Ruth graciously did, she said, here, this is yours, work with it, let the process, take it where it might go. And I need to be able to do the same thing and say to Ruth, here, whatever comes of this is what comes of it, and to let go of that. And as someone who sometimes depends too much on my sight, right, to be able to just say, absolutely, this process will be wonderful.
I have to tell you all, just as a tangent, my family did one of those wine and paint party things a couple of years ago before the pandemic. And we were, we had a teacher that was teaching us, so we're all painting the same thing, which was apropos. It was a cherry blossom tree at the edge of a riverbank. That was kind of the goal. And so they would start by saying, paint the whole canvas white, and then paint the top, third of it, blue, and let the blue blend to the white, right? Like it's kind of like a paint by numbers, but not really. But in the group, that my point in sharing this is in the group of 7 folks in my family, and of course there were 40 or 50 folks in the room, I was the only person that had experienced sight loss. And the beauty of that is that I had the best painting in the room, and I'm tooting my own horn on purpose because what happened was the sighted folks were overthinking it. And so they're like, that's something not right about that tree. So they kept going. There's something not right about that waterfall. So they kept going. And then the waterfall turned into like, this thing that never, and mine didn't. I was just like, it is what it is. And it ended up, because I didn't overthink it, because I didn't over visualize it, it actually looked much more authentic, which I thought was so interesting. And was my first experience as a blind painter.
And that's a beautiful segue into what happened next, because whereas with the first piece, Cheryl was anxious about what she was going to do with what I had given to her. Well, now it was my turn to start overthinking, as you say, Amy.
There you go.
And worrying about, oh no, I'm going to wreck Cheryl's art piece. Then just getting back into the spontaneous process, feeling what was there, and just going with the intuition. And that is so powerful. It really, really is.
Huge.
Yeah.
Rick, if you can bring up Alchemy 101 as our next visual.
And then Cheryl, you want to describe
Cheryl
it?
to describe that. Sure. There we go.
And one thing about
abstract. Lots of color here.
Lots of color. One thing about abstract to remember is that abstract really should be able to be turned and looked at from whichever side. So right now we're looking at this vertically, and if you, in your mind's eye, can think that on the top half right hand side, there is sort of I would like to call it a bit of a window of multicolors, predominantly some golden yellow, green, blue, pink, shorter paint strokes, but all those colors sort of, again, blend. There's no, or very few sort of straight edges. They sort of meld together. And as you go further to the left, there is almost like an interface of unfinished canvas, which has shown up as white, and then a bold yellow. And that yellow carries all the way down to the bottom of the canvas. And the lower half of the canvas, below what I would call that sort of multicolored window, there is some very bright pink, bubblegum pink, I'd like to call it, purple, a big swath of purple and sort of a lower swath of a salmony orange with some, I would say sort of muted purple sort of reaching up into the yellow. And it almost seems like the colors from the top have made a grander statement on the bottom. And again, that sense, that feeling might change if we rotated the painting.
Right. We don't have a huge amount of time left in the space, friends. So like maybe talk a bit about the process, because Ruth, you started talking about your anxiety around.
Well, I think we maybe can just move on to the third painting, because Cheryl did such a great job of describing it, and I think at some point I just let go of all of that judgment and decided to add color and a bit more texture, and there it is. And then the third piece, Blindsided by Green, again was an inspiration of Cheryl's, because she, really got into this. Okay, I started one that she finished. She started one that I finished. And we did those in separate sort of studio spaces. She wanted us to do one together at the same time in the same space where she was blindfolded. So that was really, really exciting and kind of the great equalizer. So this was the result. And Cheryl, you can describe it.
And describe this one to us. Again, another abstract.
Another abstract. Predominant color is red. And the red sort of carries on over top of some underlying blue. There's some bold green, large pieces of green in the bottom left corner, and some orange and yellow as you move to the right of the bottom of the canvas. And process piece, which was quite incredible with this, was how when I was first blindfolded, I tried to do what I'd observed Ruth doing, which was organize my paint by the clock, only to knock my paint over and have no idea of where the paint was after that. And when we started to paint opposite each other, it was like a dance. And we went silent and just moved. And when I was able to take off my blindfold, which was again a bit of a profound moment, until quietly, well, I was sitting quietly and Ruth suddenly told me to hurry up and get my blindfold off so I could tell her what was on the canvas. She was blindsided by the fact that there was green, because she had not put green on her palette. And I work in primary colors. So it's whatever happened, whatever came out of that was green, and neither one of us were aware of it.
This kind of reminds me of like wafts of smoke or clouds in different colors.
Nice. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, there's a fair amount of white in it as well left.
Yeah.
And much more texture in this one, if I recall it correctly, right? Cheryl?
We actually have some wool to create texture.
Yeah.
And use different implements again. We used things to create squared edges and textures within the paint. Semicircle.
Yeah.
And you're painting primarily with brushes or with hands, or what is the implement, the tool that you're using?
It was a variety of things, actually. Both of us use our hands. We tend to, well, sometimes brushes, use pieces of netting, use old credit cards, gotta make sure they're old. Use anything that might create an interesting mark.
Right. Well, that makes perfect sense to me, y'alls. But that's exactly what the process is, because that's kind of what I would do. I'd walk around my house and be like, what could make an imprint on this canvas that could be kind of interesting.
Yeah.
This is really wonderful. I really appreciate the sharing of this work, Ruth and Cheryl, because again, I think I hope it highlights for folks that are gravitating to maybe experiencing some art through this project, that through Your Eyes, My Vision, to be able to know that these partnerships are to some extent maybe lasting friendships. And I wonder if the two of you can speak on that briefly before we turn it over to our Q&A. What's come out of this for the both of you?
Well, I would say, first of all, fundamentally, if I may, the relationship with the two people collaborating is very important. There needs to be some level of trust and allowability and creativity. And there was definitely that mutual respect with Cheryl and I. I think it comes through with just hearing how we created together. And we're still definitely friends today, and probably will be doing more art in the future, and have a video project looming on the horizon. So Cheryl, did you want to add anything?
One of the things that I think was critical for us, and I would say that's probably critical for anyone doing any type of collaborative work together, is to be clear on the intention. And if you're a sighted person, be clear that if it's expected that you're going to embellish or fix someone's work, that's very different from if you're going to co-create with them.
Right.
So, and yes, we will be friends for a long time.
Thank you for that. And I guess that is the kind of conversation you can have with whoever is your facilitator, whatever project you want to do, whether that person is co-creating or supporting, filling in gaps for you personally. So it's a different process for sure.
Yeah, that would be important for sure. Yeah.
Awesome, friends. Well, we're going to transition to our Q&A. So at this point, I'm going to just, say goodbye to Cheryl in this moment, but Cheryl won't be too far if folks have questions for Cheryl. And we've got Ruth in the space, and we've got Linda, who's going to join us in the space. And friends, I would love to hear from you all about art and your experience with art. Maybe if you learned something new tonight about what other blind artists are doing. If you have questions of Linda about this project, questions for Ruth about her process, all of those things are welcomed in this space. So of course, we've got a hand from Megan right away. So Megan, why don't you go ahead and unmute? We'll just give Megan a moment. While we're waiting for Megan to unmute, I'm always like keenly. Oh, there she is. I guess I just know she's gonna jump on in and cut me off. So go ahead.
Sorry. Anyway,
No, it's all good.
Anyway, I like the paint. I just came back from my roommate's birthday dinner. So I like the painting. Like I like the painting. Like, did you actually took a bowl of paint with your gloved hand and smeared it around the paint?
Guess that's a Ruth question.
Yes, that's a lot of what I do. I paint with my hands, and if I had my first choice, I wouldn't even use a glove, because the feeling of acrylic paint in your fingers is just magic. It's so wonderful.
Oh, I never did that before.
But a lot of it is a bit toxic, so you need to wear a glove. Yeah, some of it's not, but I never know which is and which isn't. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's so neat. I've never done that before. Do you do classes like that?
I don't do classes, but you could join Linda's group and hook up with a sighted collaborator and do it together on a one-on-one.
Oh, that would be different. Yeah. I'll have to see about that, because I got I got a lot of programs coming up. So yeah, but that would be so
I'll
cool.
give it a thought.
Oh,
Yeah.
Megan,
All right.
all of the information again will be circulated in the follow-up email. So if you have questions of Linda, or you're interested in maybe having doing some art projects, you can call or email Linda.
Okay, absolutely. All right, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, we have a hand from Chantel, and then Myra, and then Lori. So Chantel, you're up.
Okay.
And we'll just give Chantel a moment to.
I can't get it close. What? What's in here? Oh.
It's okay. We can help Megan.
Hi, Amy.
Chantel, we can hear you.
Thank you so much. I have so many things that I would like to say and don't really know what to start with first, other than I hope that Linda's project, the whole project goes well, in that I am someone who knits. I don't paint, and I don't really want to touch paint. I always thought I would leave that to those who knew how to do it. My two daughters love to paint. But I hope that Linda's crew, whoever they are, can encourage people to not be intimidated by the whole process of thinking that someone could be an artist. Because I was sort of brought up, even though I've been visually impaired all my life, but the people surrounding me when I was growing up basically would have said, you have no business doing any of that, because it can't be perfect, right?
Right.
And for the longest time, I believed things like, I used to hear blind people put on their own makeup, and I think, good God, what do you look like? Is it on straight, or do you have the same on both eyes? Or anyway, I just really would be intimidated by something like that. I love the fact that I can do things without having eyesight. I can knit in the dark. And I was at a friend's house recently where she fussed for about 10 minutes one night about how much lighting I needed to knit. And finally I said, Fran, I can't see. I don't even look when I knit. You could turn all the lights off and I'd have the project finished. So, I really commend all of those people who want to do this sort of art. And remembering when Ruth invited some of us in Kelowna to come and do the tours at the art gallery, which she was so kind to arrange for us. And I thought the first time I attended, I thought, what am I doing here? Is Ruth the only person who does this? And I had no idea what it was all about. So I'm still learning a lot. I enjoyed tonight's presentation. So thank you very much.
Chantel, would there ever be a world where you would create something out of knitting that could be, I'm just throwing this out in the space, but because I don't know what kind of knitting you do, whether it's blankets or sweaters or scarves or all of the above.
I can knit anything. If there's a pattern and I can understand it, I will work at it until it's done and until it is perfect.
Do you ever knit 3D things? Like I have some folks that I know that knit almost like objects. So they might try and knit a person's face, but it's in 3D. Do you know what I mean?
Well, when you stuff something, if you knit it and you stuff it with, for instance, I just knit my granddaughter a whole basket full of fruits and vegetables. And when you touch them as a blind person, you would know exactly what they are, including the banana that has been peeled. The peel is back, the banana's, uncovered, and the peel is at the bottom. Yes, definitely. It's so possible to create things like that.
Because I think again, you seem to be a master knitter, but maybe you're also somebody who needs to be the facilitator of somebody else to help learn to knit. Just throwing it out there.
If it was knitting, that probably would be possible. I went to, I started school in the convent, and at the age of 7, they teach you how to do all sorts of things, including knitting. That's how I started. So to be involved in creating things with your hands definitely is a plus. So kudos to all of you who painting is a dream, and you want to fulfill that. Linda's project is where you need to get in touch with.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Chantel, for sharing. I love that. I didn't know you were a knitter, so I've learned something new
Oh
already.
yeah.
Okay, let's go to Lori. Lori's got a hand, and then Myra. Give Lori a moment to unmute. Oh, I think we've got Lori.
Okay, I'm like Chantel. I'm not a painter. I like to do beadwork. I like to, do the beads and make things out of. I have many projects here in my home that I have made by beads, and everything. And I like doing stuff like that. I wish we had something like your, program here in Northern California. I don't live in Canada. And because I know there's people who do like to paint, but there's nothing for people who are blind that I'm aware of here in Northern California where people can go and paint and learn how to paint and everything. So, I wish we had something like that, but all the paintings that of different people that they did tonight were just really, really, beautiful things and well described.
I'm gonna say that when Linda and I were talking about this project, I revealed to Linda that I want to learn how to glass blow.
Oh, wow.
Right. And so I'm going to put my name forward and we'll see what happens with that. But it's something I desired to do for a long time. And it's something that I can't maybe safely do myself because, well, it's a hot kiln and I don't want to touch hot glass. But it would be nice to have somebody to help facilitate that so that I could experience what that is like. So again, the artists that were showcased are painters, but the point is that whatever you can dream of is the art you want to do. I know some folks that melt crayons and make really cool tactile colors with crayons.
I'm
Waiting,
waiting,
right? All sorts of things.
I'm waiting for the Lions Wine Center to get open again where I can go back to doing my crafts.
Well, there you go.
I really enjoy it. I can sit there and people say, well, how do you know how to put the beads on the wire? I said, I use the tip of my tongue to find the hole,
Yeah.
How I do it, and that's, I was taught by another blind person to do that. And it just makes it so much easier. And I even have a flag here in my home. It's all done by beads.
Wow.
It hangs on my wall, so it just, I miss doing it because I can do it, for hours and just enjoy doing it. And we haven't been doing it because of, as everybody know, the stupid pandemic.
That's right. Well, one day you'll get back into the crafting, Lori.
I hope so, because I miss it.
Yeah. Okay, Myra. We've got a hand from Myra and then Louise.
First, I wanted to say that this is an amazing evening. I didn't think I'd be too interested in it, but I'm so inspired that both the discussions and the artwork, and now I'm just thinking a knitted fruit basket or basket of fruit. That's incredible.
Cool, eh? Yeah.
And the beadwork. But my question that I wanted to ask, thinking of what you've been discussing, I would love to try to do a project using a number of things that I have in my garden. Like I have cedar trees and Russian sage and a lot of other herbs and spices. And I wondered if you had thought of doing anything that would add scent to the paints. And what has always intrigued me is, as a little girl, I was given a Wetham stall, which those that are probably close to my age remember Wetham stalls.
Yeah.
And they always had this particular scent to them. They smelt like baby powder. And my Wetham stall is now 75 years old, and she still smells like talcum powder. So it was adding scent to things and adding garden things into the painting and work. And I wondered if anybody had done that or if you'd considered it.
Do you want me to speak to that?
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Linda.
Yeah. So I think that's a fabulous idea. Multisensory artwork is great. I mean, I think the more senses we can, and this is where my passion is, I think, and the more senses that we can evoke, I talked earlier about, getting that message the message goes into your brain, into your heart, and the feeling and the inspiration and the what you're trying to express. So, you know, I think multisensory, you know, is just enhances that. So yes, definitely. I mean, in a virtual showcase of art, it will be hard to experience some of the aspects that people include in their art: the texture, the tactile, the auditory, and not the auditory, the olfactory. But ideally, hopefully, we can actually have these things displayed, you know, in person, and then we can experience all of these different sensations. And so, yes, I think it's definitely. I'd love to play around with that and see, and maybe Ruth can answer whether there's any, like, does acrylic paint have such a strong scent to it that you can't really change the scent by adding essential oils, or can you do that?
Oh, I don't see why not. I've never done it myself, so I can't speak from firsthand experience, but I just think the sky is the limit. Anything you want to explore is fabulous. And especially items from nature. That's just really powerful, to put items from nature into a painting. And I would imagine sometimes the scent would still linger from that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Lots of cool ideas happening in the space, friends. Thanks, Myra, for sharing that. I'm curious myself now how that would work.
Amy, I was just gonna, I wanted to mention Ruth also paints with her feet, and I don't know if people know that. So, you know, I'm sure you can use your elbow or your nose or your
whole. It's a whole body experience in my world.
You could roll on the canvas.
I was gonna say, I know somebody who does that. They take the paint, and they squirt it out like out of a ketchup bottle, all different colors all over the canvas, and they lay on the canvas and they roll on it and they move around on it, and it smears where it smears, right? Yeah. Which is kind of cool. And I know there was somebody at one point, wasn't a blind person, but I think this could be cool depending on how toxic, non-toxic your paints are. Was having dogs walk across canvas, and the different colored paw prints that was left on the canvas, and then you layer them over time, right? So that they're several different colors of paw prints. So there's lots of things. I mean, I don't know, did anybody do this as a kid? Maybe not, maybe I'm the only one. It's possible, but there was in one of my elementary classes, we actually took a potato. Yes. And we carved into a potato to make a shape, right? Yeah. And then you made it into like a stamp, and then you put it in the paint, and you made a stamp, right? Yeah. I'm glad I wasn't the only one.
We did that.
We all did it.
We all did it. Yeah. Awesome. So, I mean, there's all sorts of ways that we can, create this kind of work. And I think that's the exciting piece about it. Let's go to Louise has a hand, and then Nancy has a hand. So let's go to Louise. I'll just give Louise a moment to unmute.
Okay, I got it.
We gotcha.
Got it. Okay, so, I'm going to share that, yes, art is something that I always said, it's not for me. I've tried different kinds of art, and the one I've always said I loved, and it's going to sound funny, I did it a couple different times in my life. In fact, took a class in grade 11 as one of my semester classes, and I made a few things, was ceramics. Mm-hmm. I love getting my hand in the clay and forming something. That to me is art. That is, and if I had a chance and I thought I could do it, I love to take and do. Just, nice. I'm trying to get it out of my mouth. I'd love to do one of my dog, a ceramic of my dog. That would be one of the most.
You have to sign up for this.
I don't know if I have the delicacy and my fingers to do it. That's the problem.
But you don't. But this is what the help of a facilitator is you don't need to be able to do all the pieces yourself. you have somebody with you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But oh,
it just needs to be your vision. That's why it's called your vision. Your eyes, my vision. It's your vision, and the helper does the bits that
that you need support with.
Yeah, you either need help with, or you just want them to add to what you're doing.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be a barrier for people.
I think that would be a lovely memento to make, Louise. So if you feel like you have the time and capacity, you should think about it.
Oh, I have to think
Don't
about
think
it.
too long, because you only have till April 15th.
I know, but it's something that if I could do, even one of Kiara. Oh, that would be
You might even be able to
even
do more than
harness.
one. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I could do Hawk and Kiara together, because tugging even. Oh, that would be neat.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Louise, you're getting me all fired up. I love this.
But no, it's one of those things. I loved my hand in clay when I was a kid, and even in high school. I loved it. But I knew I was not the artist, so I didn't go into it. But it's something that, if it's one thing I love, it would be to make a ceramic and dog.
Yeah.
With harness. Oh, that would be something that I think would be a treasure to have for my life.
I think that's totally doable. I don't know, Linda, do you think that's doable?
Most definitely.
I think it's doable.
I've already got ideas going around in my head. We can, this is a collaboration with all the people that are involved. We can give folks ideas, we can make suggestions. And as I say, the project is really to remove any of those barriers that we think are there. And you've just expressed one, and others have tonight as well. Just drop those. We're going to get rid of those barriers to make this happen for people. That's the idea. It's a big tall task for Laurel, but I think she's up to it. We're up to it.
She'll get her done. I have every confidence in Laurel. And again, they'll support transportation if you need to get to the studio. Those kinds of things. They'll pay for the art supplies. So there's really, all you got to do is show up.
And have a thought, an idea, a vision. Yeah. That's it.
And have pictures maybe to get the best of what we want.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Well, Louise, I'm going to leave that in your hands, but I'm hoping to experience something that you make. You know how you lovingly push Kathy? I'm lovingly pushing you.
Well, we'll talk about it in the after show.
That's right. Okay, thanks, Louise. Let's go on to Nancy and then to Faye. Give Nancy a moment to unmute. Yeah, so many great ideas happening in this space, and I hope that it's stirring up juices, that it's inspiring folks to think about the kinds of things that they could or would want to create. And again, this idea that for me, art is what you make it, so a successful piece is a piece that you put your love and attention into. It's not because it's the perfect representation of whatever it is you're trying to make, right? It's because it has the essence of you in it. Nancy, are you unmuting, my friend? Okay, maybe what we'll do is we'll go to Faye. Faye, I'll put you up on the docket. And we'll get Faye to unmute, and Nancy will have you, if you unmute in the background, just hang on to your thoughts. So Faye, how about for you? Are you able to unmute? I think we got you.
Am I on?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, so I've done lots of craft in my sighted time, but now what I really would like to learn, somebody to kind of help me along, is I would like to make my own sash, a Métis sash.
Wow.
So that's what I would like to do, and if I learn, maybe I could make it for the rest of my siblings.
Right. Faye, can you share with folks who don't know what a Métis sash is, or what it looks like, what goes into it?
Well, it's like a weave. It's many different, it depends what, like a Métis, that's like indigenous with the, you know, with the first settlers, yeah, from the Manitoba area.
But it's a woven piece, or
yeah, it's woven. Yeah, it's woven with many colors, and each family has their own colors, and every string means something. Like purple means this, and blue means this.
Wow.
Like it's yeah. So I would kind of like to learn, or if somebody could kind of show me how to do it.
That sounds like quite an endeavor to learn how to do.
But I think it's all done by finger. I think the weaving, it's all finger weaving.
Yeah, I would think you're probably pretty right about that.
Well, Faye, if you sign up, we will try and connect you with someone who can show you how that's done, and at least get you started in the process. Yeah.
Because I mean, most sighted people, they don't really know, how do we teach this person?
Yes. Well, I think that's one of the reasons.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, hang on, Nancy, just hang on a second. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that's really interesting about this particular project, right? The pairing of folks. And in some ways we're building community, but we're also in some ways educating folks.
And also embroidering. I would, you know, I wish I would have,
Lots of cool tactiles and embroidering, for sure.
Okay, that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Faye. I appreciate that. Okay, Nancy, you're unmuted, so go ahead.
Sorry, Linda, I think this is awesome. I can't wait to do this. I'd like to join, but I came in late because Kevin had to pick me up to take the dog to the vet, to the hospital. So the question was, I when I was a kid, I used to draw. Someone gave me something to draw about in a book, and I remember doing that. I'd like to learn how to. I'm not a painter, but when I went to Thailand, they started spray painting, and the guy picked me. He goes, "Can you paint?" I said, "Oh no, I don't know how. I don't even know what I'm painting." He goes, "Do you want to have a straw?" I said, "Sure." She goes, "Come here, blow at the straw." And he said, everyone thought, "Oh my God, she's blowing." And she made a beautiful picture. I never brought it home, but I heard like using a straw. My I can't paint. I could draw, but I couldn't. And they were amazed what I did by just using a straw with a lot of paint and moving it around, and they made something out of it. Do you guys do anything with spray paint too?
Anything goes, Nancy. Anything goes.
Oh, I'd love to do this.
Yeah,
this is awesome.
This is not a project that has parameters around it. I mean, it has a few in that, you know, you need to try and create something that you would like to display to others, that others might like to look, you know, see in an art show. But beyond that, how you do it and the techniques.
And it's all called imagination. It's your imagination too. Because I thought, oh, I don't know how to do that. Just do it. I go, oh, no, I don't know how to make people. And you know what? I didn't have to make people. I could have something that's flying out of the sky.
Exactly.
Well, if you heard the descriptions of Ruth's art, they just did it. They just sat down with the paint and just did it. So it was, you know, they didn't have an idea in their head, and you know, we got to make it. It's not real. It's not realism. It's abstract. What they were doing was abstract, and what you would be doing with the blowing and the painting would be an abstract picture, and that's perfectly acceptable.
Oh, good.
One piece that I kind of would like, if people can build it into their project in some way, is that it needs to be something that isn't just can be experienced and enjoyed by our peers. So if it's something that's purely visual, then there needs to be an aspect of it that can be enjoyed by you know, our peers that are blind and partially sighted. So there needs to be some, you know, really good description that's connected with it, or there needs to be some other sense that's provoked by it in some way. So that's all I'm asking is we're making this for our peers to enjoy as well.
Oh, good. And before I came on, I heard the phone number, but I don't know where this place is. It was 604.
It's actually Laurel has it, and she's located in Victoria, but it is a 604 number. It's some internet number. I don't know exactly how it works, but so I don't think it's long distance, but it might be. I don't really know.
No, it's not long distance.
Okay.
But I think, Nancy, to your question, you don't have to show up in a specific place. You know,
Okay.
The facilitator will be somebody who's in your local area, and
Oh, good.
you'll
Okay,
you'll make the art whatever is accessible to you, whether
Oh,
it's
good.
studio,
'Cause
whether
that's what I
it's your
came in late.
backyard.
I came in when the number came up, but I didn't get to hear the rest of it. And then I phoned Marie, and Marie,
No.
I listened to her on her phone because my phone died.
No, then the number was just for you, for people who don't use internet,
Okay.
to contact us to let us know you're interested. One of the goals of the project is to connect you with people in your community with the hopes that you can get introduced to that artistic community within where you live, and that this won't be the last project that you do, that you'll connect with other people and make it possible for you to continue after this project is done in whatever endeavor you want to look into. One of the things that I found as a a blind person, it's not easy to put ourselves out there and kind of try to get integrated into mainstream programs. That's not always easy for us to do, and hopefully this helps that process, and that you've made a connection with one or two people and they've introduced you to a location and a project, a possibility, and others will see what you've done and be much more inclined to want to work with people in the future that are blind. So that's one of the goals as well.
Well, thank you. I'd like to share this to my seniors. Thank you very much for sharing this with us. That's great. I love it.
Thanks, Nancy.
Keep up the good work.
All right, friends. So that's how fast time flies in this space. But before I officially say goodbye to all of our special guests today, we have a prize draw that we have to get to. So Linda, I'm going to bring Sarah into the space, and folks who may not be familiar with this, probably all of you are, but I'll just let you know that Sarah's got the names of all of the VocalEye members who are on the call in her bag of tricks. Sarah, I'm going to put you and Linda together, and you're going to walk Linda through pulling a prize name.
Perfect. So Linda, whenever you're ready, please shout out any word.
Okay. Popcorn.
We have the winner as Mary Himmelwhite. Not sure if I'm pronouncing it right.
Awesome. And Mary's still on the line with us?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, congratulations, Mary. You have won a raffle prize. So we will connect with Mary offline to make sure that we can get her a prize that is appropriate for her geographical area. I just want to extend a real big thank you, Linda, to you for bringing Your Eyes, My Vision into the space. I'm really hoping that folks will take you up on your offer to experiment with art, and then maybe we'll see some of these folks presenting on this platform in the future. You never know. So thanks, Linda, and thank you, Ruth, for joining us as well and sharing us a bit, about your work with Cheryl. So big thanks to Cheryl, and also a big thanks to Laurel for joining us in the space and providing description for the video. So that's a lot, friends, but I hope you've enjoyed your eyes, my vision. I always have to try and not mix those up. There you go. Thanks.
VocalEye, vocaleye.ca. Special thanks to our funders, the Canada Council for the Arts, the British Columbia Arts Council, the Province of British Columbia, and the City of Vancouver.